Jen, welcome to Real Pod. You look gorgeous today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Me too. I mean, how are you doing? Is it so wild watching yourself on TV? I mean, you know this from the last season, but it must be a whirlwind now as the Bachelorette.
It is kind of crazy. I think I'm definitely a little bit more used to seeing myself on TV than the last time around, but also when I see it on TV, I think in my head it's like somebody else. Like it's just not me. It's my twin.
Right. I always think that watching a show, I'm like, what would I look like on TV from like
Yeah.
360, like as an
Oh God.
actor or something?
Yeah. Like any angle possible. I'm like, no, that not me. Anytime I see something I don't like, evil twin.
Oh my gosh, I know that's a whole thing. I mean, going into TV, how were you with like your self-image and confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably at a point in my life where I'm like most comfortable in my skin that I've ever been. But obviously, like I have insecurities too, and so it's definitely tough seeing certain angles of myself or certain things that I look at every day in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I wish I don't know, something was different, and then just seeing that constantly on TV definitely isn't like the best for you. But like I said, like I watch the episode and then I forget about it, so it's like it helps that it's not like I'm rewatching myself 10 times a day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's definitely something where like I don't think I could have done this like 2 or 3 years ago. But now at this point in my life, like I am very comfortable in my own skin and the way that I look. But yeah, there are some days where I struggle, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're all human. I can
Mhm.
100% relate to that. And I actually was so moved in the very first episode that those girls came up to you on the street and were feeling so seen by you because you're the first Asian bachelorette.
Yeah, I love when people come up to me on the street like that, especially people who are from Asian culture as well, because I know exactly how they're feeling in that moment. And for them to also just be so excited for me and so excited to finally see that representation on TV. Like I get that. I get where they're coming from. And so it really touches my heart. And I know that I have been waiting for this moment for a while too. So
I know I can't even imagine growing up and thinking, oh, hey, I'm not seeing myself, and then processing the fact that you are the person that they will grow up and reference that they saw doing these incredible things, you know?
yeah, it's definitely a lot of pressure, I think, to think of it like that, to be like, "Oh, I'm like the person." Obviously, there's a lot of other Asian representation in the media too, but to kind of be the role model that I've always wanted to have when I was growing up now is really nice. But I think the other side of it too is like I'm more than just someone who's Asian in the media. It's like I'm also just showing all parts of me and who I am. And along with that comes my Asian culture and like my family and that and the Vietnamese language being spoken and all those things and kind of just normalizing it and having it all exposed and not really making it like a caricature moment, but more of like, okay, there are other people who also have the same experience.
And how has that been? Like, have you felt that you're able to sculpt your own narrative and really show your personality? Or at times, has it felt like you are being boxed in by people? Because it's obviously a great point you bring up.
Like on the show, you're saying?
I think in general media, like
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I guess, and I'll call myself out here too, right? Like I just said that. Is that said on every interview? And you're like, oh my gosh, I hope people will just stop bringing that up.
No, no, not at all, not at all. I think it's really important to acknowledge it because it's such a historic moment in Bachelor Nation that it's important to acknowledge that there has been a lack of Asian representation, all across every single media platform. So I think that part of it is very important to acknowledge. But no, I think I haven't felt boxed in yet. Maybe before I was more boxed in by my own pressures and my own limitations, but I haven't felt boxed in any sort of way. I've kind of just taken everything for what it is and really ran with it.
That's good. And I've loved how candid you've been on your social media. I feel like your personality is coming through and you're posting a lot and like people are getting to know you in your life. What has it been like to go from someone who was really like immersed in their career as a PA and then now you are kind of, I don't even want to say you're dipping a toe in. We are swimming in like the celebrity influencer pool because that's just what comes along with this journey, right? Of finding love in this way. I mean, how has that been? Do you feel like you've adjusted pretty easily? I can imagine it takes a toll on mental health at some point too.
Yeah, it's definitely all a learning curve. This social media world is very, very new to me, and just being um somewhat of a figure is definitely new to me. Having people come up to me on the street and having my every move kind of being watched is not normal. And for me, like, I grew up my whole life wanting to be in medicine and studying medicine. So I am doing the best I can to kind of navigate everything. And I mean, before I was on The Bachelor and then The Bachelorette, I like had a bit of a social media following on TikTok, just like talking about PA school stuff, but nothing to like this extent, right? And yeah, it definitely is hard having so many eyes on you at all times and having so many opinions on you. Like, if I wake up in a bad mood and I'm having a bad day with my self-esteem and I go on social media and I read like hate comments or whatever it is about my body or my race or whatever it is, it can definitely put me in a worse mood than I already am. So it's all about, for me, kind of figuring out how I'm feeling at certain times during the day and just taking time away from social media.
Mhm. How have you been able to learn that about yourself? Because I feel like it's a lot of self-awareness, right? Of, "Hey, I woke up today, I'm already feeling a little insecure, I'm not feeling confident in this area, and if I go online, it's gonna send me in the spiral." There's still people who don't, like, connect those dots, right? It's just day after day, they're not feeling great. So, I mean, have you been in therapy? Do you do mindfulness work?
I am in therapy, yes, but I think for me, I'm very, very in tune with my emotions, and I know when certain things trigger me. I know that when I read a bad comment, if that makes me feel a certain way, I won't do it again. So I'm very, very aware of things that make me happy, and I lean towards that. And when things don't make me happy, I try not to do that, because I think my entire life, especially in college, I've very much just been down a path where I constantly do things that are bad for me. And I think the turning point came where I was like, I need to take control of my own life and not just let things hit me as they go, but be able to control the good and the bad.
Mhm. I have been on and off in therapy since college, I wanna say. I completely would credit, like, my ability to think deeply about myself and, like, what's good for me and not good for me on, like, having those conversations, and I think it's so important that we normalize it because then people won't feel like they have to keep struggling in silence.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the best part about it is like being able to talk about it with other people, with your friends, with people online, is to know that you're not alone when you're having those moments, when you're having those times where you're not your best self. And just creating the awareness for that, because everybody goes through
Mhm.
ups and downs. And I hate when on social media everyone's like, oh, everything's great and perfect and amazing all the time. Like, it's not. Like, you don't have to constantly say like you're in a bad mood all the time online, but like to make it real and to just let people know that like my life isn't perfect. Whatever I post on social media every day like isn't the truth of it all the time. And it's just about putting that out there.
And did you feel like pressure obviously when you were studying and you were in school? Because I mean, I've seen so many doctors and people in medicine talking about the irony of, like, you're there to then take care of others, but the process and the tests and the pressure and the hours of that is really intense. I mean, how were you managing that, and was it hard?
Definitely. My mental health in PA school is rocky at times, but I've kind of gotten into rhythm where I know what things make me feel good, and that's working out every day, because I get that hour to get out of my own head and to not think about school, not think about my patients. And that's the thing that grounds me every day. So when I was working in clinicals and seeing patients, I would wake up at like 4 in the morning. If I had to be there at 6, I wake up at 4, go to the gym, make sure I get it in early so that I can feel good for the day, so that I can be there for my patients. So it's all about taking time out of your day for yourself. And I would tell myself, like, if I thought I needed to study for another extra hour, I would wonder how productive is that studying going to be if I'm miserable. So take that hour, go to the gym, go read a book, go do whatever you need to do, and then come back.
Mhm. And why did you want to pursue the field of medicine? Was that something you always knew you were gonna do?
I kind of came around it in high school. My brother was in EMT, so then I went to EMT class because I just I thought it was cool, everything that he was doing. He'd come home and tell me stories, and I've always just leaned towards wanting to help people. And then I realized I really like medicine. So then going into college, I was pre-med and I wanted to be a doctor. And then I quickly realized that that lifestyle wasn't conducive to like what I wanted in my future. I wanted to be more present in my kid's life, and I didn't want to be in school for that long. So then I found physician assistant, and I just felt like that was the best path for me. And yeah, I've always loved helping people and being able to do that in like a sciencey way, which is like how my brain works best. That is kind of like the best thing for me to do. So
Mhm. And your parents obviously immigrated here from Vietnam. You've talked about that, which isn't it just so like I was watching this documentary the other day and it was talking about Ellis Island. And I'm a few more generations down than you are. Obviously, you're the first generation for your family. But just thinking about my Yaya's mom who came here, had an arranged marriage, like they didn't know the language. And then my great papu, like somehow created a business, and then it's like the fact that we're here based on people who took risks. It's like it really makes you think about how your life is so much bigger than you, which I think is a
Mhm.
comforting thought.
Mhm. I honestly get chills every time my mom kind of tells me everything she's been through. She's been through like multiple wars, like military like raiding her house and having to run and all these things. And I'm like, my biggest challenge every day is like, what croissant am I gonna order in the morning? Like it's crazy that my family has just been through so much and completely like removed themselves from everything that they knew just to come to America and give their children a better life. It really puts things into perspective.
Mhm. And what was your parents' parenting style? Obviously, coming over to America, there's so many new things going on. Like, how when you look back at your childhood, I guess, like, what are the things that they did that you feel like were really formative? Because you are obviously very successful now, and I'm sure they have to be so proud.
Yeah, I think they really instilled in me that you have to work for anything that you want. So, I mean, just being as a kid in school and stuff, like they would make sure I was on top of my homework, just making sure I was doing extra work all the time. I think like very typical Asian parenting stuff is like you're doing extra work, you're on top of everything. And they hounded me for my grades for sure all the time. It's like if you don't get A's, you're not doing enough. Which honestly, in hindsight, like I was annoyed at the time because it's like why aren't I more than just my grades? But and I was, but in hindsight, like it's good that they made me work so hard for that because they knew that I was capable of it. So now I think it's kind of instilled this nature in me where it's like I know how good I can be if I just put work into it, instead of kind of just falling to like mediocrity, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. And also as we get older, like you start to put yourself in your parents' shoes and you probably think like, you know, yeah, they were strict and I felt
Mhm.
like I had to do certain things and I didn't have as much like autonomy or freedom as I might have wanted. But also, now that you're growing up and you're thinking about these stories your mom's told you, it's like you can understand probably why they wanted you to just be successful and pushed you so hard. Like, are you having those sort of going back and rethinkings of the narrative?
Absolutely. Like when I was a kid, I didn't understand any of it. I don't think I ever really asked my mom, like, why did you come here? Like, and what was your life growing up like? And what was the immigration process like? Those are not conversations I had with my mom as like a 13-year-old child. But as I got into college and just had more perspective and wanted to learn where I came from and all these things, like I was having those conversations with my mom, and it made me really understand a lot more why she pushed so hard for us to have a good life, because she knew what it could be like if we weren't successful. And she knows what it's like to go from nothing and to work hard and like to have a life for yourself. Like she came to America not speaking English, knocking on doors to find a job, even though she was in medical school right before she immigrated. So she completely turned her life around for me and worked hard for that. And she knew that she wanted that for me too.
Mhm. You also opened up on the show about growing up with a good amount of fights happening in the house. How did you deal with that when you were younger?
When I was younger, I really shut everything out. I'd lock myself in my room and just tune it out and go and like read a book or play my computer games, whatever it was. And I think that it really um affected the way I coped with situations like that growing up, because as an adult now I realize that I try to stay away from conflict and that I will shut down and not open up to people about things, because when I was growing up and that was happening in the house, I wasn't telling my friends about it. I was going to school pretending everything was okay. So I've kind of developed this coping mechanism as an adult where I try to pretend that everything is okay and I don't open up about what's really going on. And I think that kind of hinders me sometimes in a lot of my adult relationships from being close with other people, because I never truly tell them what's actually going on with me. But I've come to a point where I am very aware of it now, and I think there's a lot of strength that comes in vulnerability rather than putting on a defensive, "I'm okay," um, look. So, yeah, I'm trying to grow out of it still, and I'm navigating that right now.
Jen, I'm obsessed. Those are the words of someone who, yes, clearly has an amazing therapist and pays attention when they go. I feel like I'm the same way.
Yeah, I think we think that like things fall apart when we fall apart, which is not necessarily true. I think the longer you try to hold it all in together, the more you're gonna have like this big outburst, you know?
And, if we can try to unpack some of the generational trauma or the tendencies that aren't as helpful,
Mhm.
it's like as much work we can do, we're like relieving the load from then. If we have a daughter one day and then they have a daughter and they have a daughter. I saw this Instagram video recently where it was like 4 glasses of water, and the first one is like, I don't know, like really dark orange. And then you pour it into the one, slowly it like dilutes. And it's all about like the
Yeah,
amount of work you're doing on the generational trauma.
absolutely. And I think it's so important now that like we have social media and all these platforms to be talking about these things, because we're in a generation where mental health is a lot more accepted and openly talked about. Whereas I feel like our parents and our grandparents, they didn't have that outlet and they didn't have that perspective, and so they feel like they have to keep it all together more, and they won't talk about mental health as much.
Mhm. Definitely. And I think that it's fun seeing our parents like learn. Like it's fun
Mhm.
seeing my mom set a boundary because she's like a through and through people pleaser. She would run out of everything she has to make sure someone else has a good experience. And so it's really like makes me happy when she says no. And I'm always like, whenever she texts me like, sorry, like I can't do it today. I like send her celebration emojis. I'm like, that's
Oh,
okay. Set the boundary, mom.
oh, that is the sweetest thing. Oh, your mom seems like the sweetest woman.
She is. She's listening too.
Oh,
I'm sure she's thinking, this Jen is just so delightful.
oh my
Um,
God.
have your parents like taken to the changing tides and this conversation at all? Or are you seeing them maybe like support you, but say it's too late for me?
They're definitely supporting me. And I think I've talked about, my mom maybe going to therapy and unpacking her divorce and all those things. And she's like, I don't want her to go to therapy. I have you. I'm like, well, I'm not a mental health professional.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, she's great and she's amazing. And she has, developed her own coping mechanisms and her own outlets. And so um I think she's slowly trying to enter this mental health conversation, but it's not natural to her.
And I feel like that's a great point because a lot of times we, the new young generation, can get so excited about like the therapy or what we're learning, and then we want to help our parents or we want our siblings or everyone we know to do it our way.
Yeah.
But you can also have respect for someone's path and like where they're at, and like you said, they found a way. And who knows if it would work for you or not, but also just accepting everyone is doing the best that they can.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, yeah, you're right. It's about respecting the ways that they've navigated their own mental health. So
Mhm. And as we talk about, analyzing the past and then trying to make adjustments for the future, what would you say were the types of relationships you would frequently see yourself in, or just the type of guy you would go for? And I'm curious if with, this season of The Bachelorette and this opportunity that you had, did you have like a moment with yourself where you said, okay, these are the things I've done. Like, I really got to try to be different. Like, talk me through that process because it just fascinates me to be dating so many people at once and also maybe have this pressure of like, okay, I'm really getting things laid out for me here. I want to do everything I can to make it work out in the end, right?
this is my favorite question yet because I have dated so many just bad men for me. I've dated one very, very toxic relationship and the other relationships that I've entered have been just just horrible for me because I've been looking for the wrong things in life because I've grown up in such a tumultuous time and because I never had a role model of love and I've never seen that affection and I've never really received that outward affection from somebody before. So going into dating and navigating that in high school and in college and in my adult life has been nothing but trial and error, and I'd like to think that now I've kind of been through all the error and I'm learning from it now because my tendencies in the past has been to go for very emotionally unavailable men, people who are giving me little bits here and there, not standing up for myself in certain situations and being with men who would just give me just the littlest bit and being accepting that because I haven't felt any kind of affection growing up. And so going into my adult life now, I'm trying to unlearn a lot of old habits and you can kind of see it throughout the show and like watching it back now, it's definitely tough too to kind of see those old habits kind of die hard sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like I was a hopeless romantic from the beginning, like watching, the princesses stories. Like I loved Jasmine and Aladdin and all that stuff. I was a big Taylor Swift music, just formative for me in high school.
Oh,
Are you a Swiftie?
big Swifty, absolutely. I remember getting her first like CD back in the day when CDs were a thing at like a Best Buy. And I like stumbled upon like the Fearless album and then I was hooked ever since.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Hey, I should know. The good ones are Swifties. Also, I just try to think about like dating multiple people at a time or sharing a kiss with multiple people in one night. And this being the scenario where everyone is just like understanding of it, right? Like if it weren't on the show, it wouldn't probably
Yeah.
fly. So how has that been for you to like program in your mind that you're having all these relationships at once? Is it difficult? Like I can't even imagine.
It's a very, very unique environment, and it's not something that a lot of people can understand. And for me in that moment, being there, like I understood what I was there for and why it made sense for me because each of the relationships were individual to me. Um, and then, now watching it back and seeing comments and stuff like that, and people being like, oh, she's kissing everybody, she's doing this and that. And I'm like, okay, but like you don't understand. Like it's a very, very unique situation in which these relationships are individual and it's just the environment, like if I were out here in my real dating life, like I'm not kissing 10 boys at a time. Like I'm dating one person. So yeah, it's a little hard seeing critiques here and there, but like I knew why I was there and I knew I had to do what I had to do for it all to
Yeah.
kind of play out the way it needed to play out.
Yes, I'm standing behind you, and I want to defend that because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we've all said we are going to do this it's an experiment in a
Yeah.
way, right? So I'm going to do it like wholeheartedly. Like if I'm going to date all these people, like if this is the point in this relationship that I would feel like I'm going to kiss them, I'm going to kiss them. Like you
Yeah.
can't like half in the experience, but it
Yeah.
has to be so hard trying to fall in love and like put yourself out there and then have the world judging it every single week. And they're not even seeing the full thing, right?
Yes, yes, and that's the thing is that not everything's being shown, and you're seeing a 2-hour episode when in reality, like, you're having these long conversations with these guys, so I think people see the surface level of these relationships and don't realize, like, the depth that they actually hold.
Hmm. I feel like if I was the Bachelorette, I'd have two fears. And sorry, not me sharing my fears and like, but you know what?
Totally.
IRL, I know like you've gotten through the experience somehow.
Uh-huh.
So, um, I will say the first fear would be like, what if I like fall for two people and then for the rest of my life, I'm always like, was it this one or that one? Like that, did you have fears going into it? Like, that's hard. And then my other fear would be, what if I fell in love with someone on the second day and was like, "Oh, now I got to go through all this stuff and pretend with all these other people, but I know."
I will say the first fear of falling in love with 2 people, I don't think that I had. Um, I don't know, like, I think that, like, falling in love with 2 people and then picking one and then and wondering, I don't think that I had that because
Good.
I don't know. For me, I was just like, I'm gonna figure it out and it's gonna be fine. The second fear, though, of finding one person in week 2 and then like having to just go through everything, I definitely had because in my real dating life, I very much like will hook onto one person, have tunnel vision, and not think about other people. So I was very, very nervous about that. But I'm very happy that in this environment, I was pushed to be so open because you just had to be like it's impossible for me to fake anything, so I constantly had to be open to each and every one of the relationships, and I'm so happy that I did because it really allowed me to grow outside my comfort zone and learn so many new things about what I wanted in each relationship. Like it was really nice to be able to compare each relationship to the other because I was like, okay, this guy's giving me this, like, will this one also give me this, or what is this one lacking, and how can this relationship be the best compared to this? Like it's like toxic to be like you're comparing these guys, but like I was comparing like the relationships and what was best for me, you know?
Yeah, but it's not toxic
Right,
because you literally are there to compare them all to then choose the one that you like the most, right?
right. Yeah,
Honestly,
exactly.
iconic when you really think about it.
I honestly really recommend it for anyone who's like struggling in their dating life to just go and date 25 men all at once because I learned so much.
Love that. Did you have any hesitations when you had the offer to be the Bachelorette? Because it seemed pretty much like this perfect synergy, right?
So many. I'm a hopeless romantic, so I've always wanted to find love and be able to like go on a journey to find myself. So I was like, this is like such a great opportunity. But on the other hand of things, like I had to think about what being the bachelorette means. Like, am I going to be able to be PA? Is my PA school going to allow me to do this and like come back to school because that's such a big part of my life too? How much do I want my life in the media and do how much do I value my privacy and like what is that going to look like after the show? And then I was like, like how do I know for sure like this is going to work? And if it's not going to work, am I going to be okay with that? So there were so many different factors to my decision. And I think the biggest one was honestly being in PA school and making sure that my school was going to work with me with that because I wanted to make sure that I was going to have a life to go back to and to not just like be thrown into this reality TV world and be stuck there because I like my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of you loving your life and PA school, because your family and your parents had more of a traditional maybe vision for like the ladder you'd climb here,
Mhm.
what are their thoughts on you being the Bachelorette and everything that's going on?
Oh yeah. When I first told my mom about the Bachelorette, she was like, "You told me you were only taking one break for school. Like, are you sure you're gonna go back after this time?" Like, her school is always on the top of her list of things to worry about, which like I understand, you know. And for me, like I'm never gonna not graduate PA school. Like I'm going to do it. And my mom reminds me every day. She goes, "When are you going back to school?" I'm like, "Soon, mom. We're figuring out." And I'm on the same page with her, I'm not gonna drop everything in my life to just go into reality TV as much as great as that can be too. It's just not my path. And it's nice that my mom and I are like on the same page about that.
How about your dad and or your brother?
Yeah, so my dad's not really in the picture. I haven't really spoken to him, and my brother is he and I have more of the same mindset because we're from the same generation, even though we're like 9 years apart. But he kind of understands where I'm coming from a little bit more because he's like, yes, this is a great opportunity for you. So like he was a
Mhm.
lot more supportive for sure.
And going through like the search for a husband and thinking of a wedding, all that stuff, like it does bring up family. I mean, I had my wedding almost 2 years ago, and it's just like, yeah, it makes you think about a lot in life when you're thinking about like that big step. I mean, how have you been kind of navigating maybe when you were a girl thinking, "Oh, this is something that, like, both my parents would be a part of," to now and saying, "Okay, like, this is a different reality that I'm in."
Yeah, my father wasn't really such a significant part of my life growing up. It's not like I dreamed of having a wedding and he would be there, like maybe when I was like a little girl, but then, like middle school and high school and then in college and being an adult, like that kind of was never um in the future for me. So I don't feel like at this point like I'm missing out on anything in my life, but for sure like when I see those father-daughter dances, like that's something that definitely like hits a nerve for me, but at the end of the day, like I don't feel like anything's missing from like a wedding or me finding a person and dating somebody because I have everything that I need and my mom and my brother, and they're so supportive and they're my family. So for me, it's really about what family looks like to me more than what the traditional family might look like to other people.
I think that's so important, and there are so many people who they relate to that, and that's their story, and you don't see it a lot, and
Mhm.
also I think weddings and stuff, it can bring up a lot of feelings based on, like, what society's expectation is or that kind of thing. Can you just talk more about, like, how you've gotten to this place and this mindset for someone listening who might be, like, might have had, a certain family dynamic their whole life, but then as they get older, thoughts or those videos or the TikToks creep in, because I think it's important to speak to it when possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're so wired as to what a traditional family looks like because of TV and the media and TikTok and all these things. And you see all these people with two-parent homes. And that's not the reality of things all the time for everybody. There are so many people who don't have moms or don't have dads or don't have brothers and maybe just don't have parents. And the thing is, family is what you make of it, whether that's blood or whether that's people who genuinely just support you and love you and are there for you. And so for me, like, I don't know, I've always just had the mindset of like family is chosen. It's not just um the people that you were born with. And so I really try to surround myself with people who genuinely support me and love me. And it doesn't always have to be someone blood related.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jen, for sharing it. And it makes me think of when you will be opening up to these men on the show. I mean, I don't know if we can talk in past tense, but like what was or is it like for you to decide like who you feel comfortable being vulnerable with? And then also like needing to be vulnerable once can be really difficult, like to open up to someone. But then if you're really diving into this experience, there's a world where you're opening up to 5 people. I mean, did that take an emotional toll or how did you think about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to think about. Um, it's funny because in each relationship, the moments to open up were different. It wasn't like the same day every day. So it was nice that it was spaced out. It wasn't like I was like constantly going through the same emotions every day with these men. But I also felt like each relationship I opened up about different things according to how I was feeling that day or what kind of conversations piqued that topic. But I also felt like I really had to listen to my gut in the sense of who I felt most comfortable to open up to. Like, was this person going to be receptive to that? And once I did open up, how did that person receive that information and process that? And that's all just a test to see like how they're going to show up for me as a partner. So
Mhm.
it was hard, but it was also necessary to do in order to figure out if which of these men were going to be um a successful partner for me.
I love that you said, listening to your gut. And that's honestly the last thing I wanted to talk to you about because it's so important for everyone. I mean, whether you are the bachelorette or you're just dating someone, it always will come back to your gut. Did you have a really good sense of your gut instincts prior to being the bachelorette? How have you developed it? And I'm assuming you've obviously had to make some big choices that only you can make.
Funny enough, I think what I've learned the most on this journey is to not trust my own gut.
What?
Only because I have developed such bad dating habits that when I find somebody that I'm so drawn to, um, I realize that sometimes it's because of bad habits that I've had in my past or things I'm used to from growing up. And so what I've learned throughout this journey is that my gut, specifically for me, is not always right. Um, because I'm so drawn to the toxic things that I've had in my past. And so I had to use a lot more logic and a lot more of what I want. And sometimes that's like an uncomfortable feeling when you haven't always had that. And it's tough to go towards something you're uncomfortable with, right? But it's like, isn't that what you want? So yeah, I had to go against my gut a lot of the times.
Interesting. Because I would almost want to like question if is it your gut then that you're going against, or is it your like your automatic inkling, right? Which is like versed in maybe the conditioning or our ego mind or like the toxic habits. But then it's like if you close your eyes and you breathe and you meditate, like the divine self, like is it calling you somewhere else? Because almost in the way you said it, I'm like, but is there love in the choice? Because it almost sounds like love is in the gut, but then if you go logic, it's like head over heart, you know?
Yes, but I think with love, it's a combination of like head and heart. It's not just like purely heart.
So then I guess to break it down, we're saying your immediate instinct,
Yeah.
you've been healthily questioning because of where it's led you before, to then actually slow down and take the time to go through like what you really want and what makes sense. And then the heart follows, the heart will follow.
Yes.
Feel free to say no and then explain it to
No,
me.
no, yes, yes. I think so because I think that when you're so programmed towards one feeling, it can be uncomfortable to go towards another and your heart might be not be there yet, but if that's what you want, then your head might have to go first and then your heart will follow. Yes, that's what you
Yeah.
said.
I will say that is a little bit how I think about my relationship with my husband because for a year I knew him. I thought he was so fun and amazing and the greatest guy, but I was just like I want to be single. Like I didn't have like a desire like to be with him and only him and to make him mine. But then a year later, I suddenly had this like, oh my god, I'm in love with him. I need to be with him forever. Like and it just came out of nowhere.
Oh.
And then we started dating.
Okay. And have you had like different feelings in like your previous relationships?
I definitely, like, used to like the Unavailable, didn't know if they liked me or not. This is so freaking gross and weird to say, but, like, my older brother was 3 years older than me and, like, just never really, like he wasn't very, like, verbally, like, loving and, like, like, it would come in, like, little glimpses, and so I
Yeah.
almost think when guys were similar to that, I liked that, and so
Yeah.
when my husband was very much like, "Here's a
Mhm.
drink. Let me get your number. Where are you guys going later?" Like, very punctual and communicative. I was like, "That's too easy. No, thank you."
Funny enough, that's not a weird thing to say because I've had similar thoughts like that too. Because my brother is 9 years older than me, and he is very like he's not the most like empathetic person, and he's not the most just open, like vulnerable wise. And so I've also just leaned towards men who like who take me as a joke and like tease me and all this stuff, but like aren't super emotionally vulnerable and don't listen um to my emotions and stuff like that because my brother just never did that. So I'm right there with you with like the line of thinking of like, oh, this is what I'm used to. So, you know,
Right.
this must be right. Yeah.
Right. I know you can't give us any answers, but is there anything you could tell us about what we can expect as we keep watching?
Definitely ramps up emotionally, as the season goes on. I definitely get a lot more vulnerable with these men, and the emotions are high, so that's definitely what you can expect.
Okay, I'm excited. It's always fun when you get to see the scenes that were in the opening teaser trailer. I'm like, here it is. We get to know why she's crying and running away.
I know. Okay. Don't worry.
Well, yeah. Well, Jen, thank you so much for taking some time. I know you're really busy right now, but we're loving watching your love stories unfold. We're rooting for you to have the happy ending that you deserve. And it was so lovely to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me.